Max, I'm handing the virtual microphone over to you.
All right, can everyone hear me and see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. I was telling Nate and folks that maybe joined earlier here, I have a confession. I don't use Zoom in my day-to-day job. You might be surprised. I'm a Google product manager. I use Meets. So it might take me a few slides here to figure out where to look, what to click. Bear with me. I can't actually see my slides right now. It's just like a tiny little thumbnail. So I'll do my best here. Have some patience. I'm sure I'll figure it out after a few slides. So we're gonna talk about solving the right problem. But I'm a James Bond fan. I love James Bond movies. And one thing about James Bond movies is they jump right into the action and they do the credits later. So what if I told you that Tinder and books were competitors? So imagine you're single, well, let's hope so for this story. And you're laying in bed, you're ready for sleep, you're a little bored, maybe slightly restless, you got the spilkies, you have a stack of books next to your bed, you think about grabbing one, but instead you grab your phone. You fire up the old Tinder app and start swiping. Hours go by, your eyes are red, you feel lonely, you're exhausted, and so I'm trying to find where my presentation went. You still see it? Yeah, good, okay. And now it's past 1 a.m. and you have to be up in less than 5 hours. You're like, oh my goodness, you put the phone down, a bit sad that maybe you didn't get as many swipes as you wanted, many matches as you hoped for. You try to sleep, but that damn blue light stuff really, impacted you and kept you awake. You wake up again in the middle of the night and you can't help but check your phone, want to see if there's any matches. Maybe that person messaged you. I don't know. And you quickly check, you don't see anything, you go back to sleep. And the next morning you wake up absolutely exhausted. The next night, you shower, brush your teeth, get your jammies on, crawl into bed, and you look over and you think to yourself, damn, that was a long day. I didn't get any sleep last night. And you look over that nightstand and you say, you see your phone, you see the books, you're tired, you're not yet ready to bed, you still need to wind down. And do you reach for the book this time? In this moment, you faced a struggle. You had a job to do. You wanted to relax, you wanted to calm the brain, you wanted to fall asleep, and you looked around you for your options. You made a decision, and that decision didn't work out for you. And so the next time you face that struggle, maybe you make a different choice, Tinder or a book. And really, it could be anything from here. Tinder, it could be Instagram, any sort of app. But this approach to viewing the world, our decisions, and the competition is what we call jobs theory. Jobs theory was coined by a gentleman named Clay Christensen. He's an economist, famous professor at Harvard Business School. He's a famous author of many books, including The Innovator's Dilemma and Competing Against Luck. So today, I want to tell you a little bit about jobs theory and how to apply this framework to be a better product manager. So now our credits, our agenda. So we're going to talk here about jobs theory definition. We're going to talk about 3 things that I like about jobs theory. We're going to talk about how to apply it to product, and then we'll have time for Q&A. But first, I want to talk to you all about milkshakes. So in 1990, or in the mid-1990s, Clay Christensen took on a consulting engagement, and he was asked by McDonald's to sell more milkshakes. McDonald's had studied the problem for months with incredible amount of detail. I mean, the McDonald's are a multinational organization. They have tons of marketing and research dollars. Really smart people are working for them in their corporate headquarters. They segmented their market, as good people might do. They brought in milkshake customers and asked them loads of questions. How would you improve the milkshake? What would make you buy more of them? Do you want them cheaper, chunkier, chocolatier? All sorts of questions. And, even when customers would explain what they thought they liked, it was difficult to know exactly what to do. And the McDonald's team was trying to innovate. The goal was to satisfy the highest number of potential milkshake buyers. That's what they wanted to do. But yet nothing they were doing was making an impact on selling more milkshakes. There was all this work, all these presentations, all this analysis. We can all picture these days. But then that quarterly or monthly meeting with executives, you look at that bar chart and you can't fudge the numbers. At the end of the day, the milkshake sales were largely unchanged. None of their insights were leading to any sort of sizable multiplier impact. So enter Clay and his team. They went to McDonald's and they sat there and watched customers for 18 hours a day. And one of the things they learned is that over 50% of milkshakes were sold between 6 and 8 a.m. His team asked these milkshake procurers many questions, and they wanted to know why they made the choices they made. Why did they stop into the fast food chain that day? Why did they decide to get a milkshake? But most importantly, they stood outside McDonald's, and when the procurer of the milkshake walked out, they said, "Excuse me, what job were you trying to do that made you come in here to buy a milkshake today?" The person that bought the milkshakes obviously was like, "What? What in the, it's 6 a.m. What did you just ask? What?" And at first they thought that was a weird question, what job? But Clay and the team continued to probe, and they'd ask more, okay, if you didn't buy a milkshake today, what else would you have bought? Why did you decide to come in? And soon it became clear that these early morning commuters all had the same job. They had a long and boring ride to work, and they would show up to work and they'd get hungry in the middle of the morning, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So they needed something to keep their commute interesting. They weren't hungry yet, but they were going to be in a few hours, and they needed to have something that would stop that mid-morning stomach rumbling. And when Clay asked these people, there were a lot of other options that they talked about. One person said, well, I could use a banana, but I'm hungry again later, trust me. And also the banana peel gets brown, it's gross, it smells, you don't want that in your car. Donuts, sticky and messy, it's a disaster. Bagels, they're very dry, and then you got to put cream cheese on it, and then there's a whole sort of issue there with the car, it's getting messy. One customer actually said that they had a Snickers bar or a candy bar, but they felt so guilty about it, they never wanted to do it again. But the milkshake, you can drink it with one hand on the wheel. You can put it in the cup holder. It doesn't require me to take my eyes off the road. It's nice and thick. It takes me 20 minutes to finish it. The entire commute keeps me awake. And, I kind of like when it has like the chunk of strawberry or something, or like a chocolate thing. It kind of, surprises me every once in a while. I'm like, ooh, that's delightful. And so equipped with this information, Clay and his team decided, what we should be recommending? We should move the milkshake machine to the other side of the counter and let people come in and do self-service. Maybe we should have membership cards. Maybe we should have a milkshake with espresso or coffee. Maybe we should have fruit options to make it more healthy. Maybe we should have flavors like banana nut muffin milkshake. And these were successful strategies for McDonald's. So what did Clay and his team see that McDonald's and these experts missed? They understood the job to be done, the job of the milkshake. So now I want to define for you jobs theory. Jobs is shorthand for what an individual seeks to accomplish in a given circumstance. We hire solutions to achieve that job we want to get done. Sidebar real quick. If you think like the milkshake people, that the word job is just kind of weird and you're not into it, I got the answer for you. Just switch out job with the word task or outcome. Voila, we're good to go. We can keep talking. We can continue our presentation. You don't need to sign off now, and you can be very happy. For now, I'm going to keep using the word job because I like it. This is the definition, but I want to break it down into 3 parts. Part number 1. To understand a customer's job, what we really need to hone in on is the progress that the customer is trying to make in a given circumstance, what the customer hopes to accomplish. The key word here is circumstance. In our milkshake dilemma, the circumstances were that people were tired. It was early, they were driving to work, and it might be easy to say that the job was just that they were hungry and looking for breakfast. But stopping there misses the point. It does not appreciate the circumstances around the job. When I think about circumstances and jobs, I'm always reminded of my favorite Seinfeld clip. Jerry is going to the car rental place. I don't know anyone here is Seinfeld fans. I will do my best to try to bring this to life for you. Jerry says to the car, walks up to the rental person, the salesperson says, I have a reservation and here's my name. And the person behind the desk confirms that they have his reservation for a mid-sized vehicle. But she informs him, I'm sorry, Jerry, we don't have any mid-size vehicles for him. And Jerry says, I don't understand. I have a reservation. And she says, yes, we have your reservation. And she said, and Jerry goes, but the reservation keeps the car here. That's the point, the job of the reservation. That's why you have reservations. The salesperson counters, I know why we have reservations. Jerry says, I don't think you do. You know how to take the reservation. You don't know how to hold the reservation. And really, that's the most important part, job of the reservation. Anyone can take reservations. So I love Jerry Seinfeld. And I think Jerry is one of our best job identifiers in the world. And so when Jerry called this rental car company, they may have asked him, what are you calling for? And Jerry might have said, I'd like to make a reservation. But that's not actually the job he wanted to accomplish when he made the phone call. He wanted to get from point A to point B. And the salesperson missed that. Another way to think about identifying jobs is to think about a struggle. Whenever you catch yourself frustrated, struggling, or just looking around for something that you're just not sure what it is yet, maybe you're at a car rental place, maybe you're hungry at 9 a.m., you have a job to do. And making progress towards that job cannot be separated from the circumstances you are in. For example, I want to get back in shape. I'm in terrible shape right now. And that's a job. And to make progress towards that job, I'd like to work out. And I'd actually maybe would love to work out right now. But unfortunately, the circumstances are that I am talking to you. And I also have a 3-month-old baby at home. And so I have to also add that that is a circumstance I am dealing with. If my wife heard me call our 3-month baby a circumstance, she would probably not be too excited by that. But the point is, there are circumstances around my job that I want to get in shape that I can't detach. And if we try to detach, I might just get frustrated. Bottom line, everyone is on a quest to complete a job. We need to first identify what that job is. Then we must appreciate that the quest to complete the job is made more difficult by the particular set of circumstances we face. We cannot detach from the circumstances. And just like any quest, we're searching for an answer. And that answer is the product opportunity. Number 2, getting to the why. Jobs theory is about identifying and understanding the reason why people make choices they make. So I want to read a quote here by Peter Drucker. The customer rarely buys what the business thinks it sells them. Only by asking the customer, by watching them, by trying to understand their behavior, can one find out who they are, what they do, how they buy, how they use what they buy, what they expect, and what they value, and so on. I think about this all the time when I go into like Lowe's or Home Depot or really like any home improvement store. I'm handy. I'm not very handy. I'll be very honest with you here. But I try to go in and I act like I know what I'm doing. And so the salesperson walks up to me and they say, oh, what are you looking for? And I say something like, oh, I need a drywall anchor. And they're like, oh, usually they might tell me, okay, aisle 8. But a good salesperson would ask me, well, what are you trying to accomplish? And in that question is the nugget of gold the salesperson needs to help me. It's how they identify the job, because they asked me why. And maybe I'm trying to hang a birdhouse and I didn't even realize that I could use a wire. Maybe I could use some tape instead of drilling. Maybe I went in and asked for a ladder, but what I really needed was like a pole with a tree cutter on the end of it. Theodore Levitt is another economist. You'll see a theme here. I like economists. It's my educational upbringing. He had a famous quote that people don't want 1/4-inch drill bits. They want 1/4-inch holes. I think many people probably heard that before. And the idea here is this connects very much into jobs theory. What else could I use other than a drill to get a 1/4-inch hole? And that's what job theory is all about. It gets us thinking about the why. Number 3, hiring. Yeah. I love this concept of hiring when we talk about jobs we've done. We go back to the definition. One of the things we talk about is we hire a product to help us achieve a job, given the circumstances, make progress. When we hire something, or when you hire someone, you're hiring them to do a job. This could be in a corporate setting. It could also be in a personal setting. It could be a general contractor in your home, a plumber, a handy person, a painter, a dog walker, a barber, a babysitter, any of those things. And if they don't do the job that you hired them for, you don't use them again. You go to a different barber next time. In some circumstances, you fire them. And this is why companies, we have performance reviews and we have cycles, review cycles, because we want to make sure that we're meeting the job requirements. This is why we do deposits when people do contract work on our home, where part of the work is finished and then we pay the rest when the job is done. Employees are being evaluated to see if they're meeting the job requirements all the time. And so why would we not apply this theory to the products we use every day? And so this is what I think is really fascinating, because if we take this approach, we apply it to our products, we appreciate that our products can be fired by our customer at any time. So we rephrase our thinking to buying to hiring. We're focused to think a little bit more about the experiences around the product, the experiences using the product, the experiences after buying it. And this is what makes me think of churn, and most importantly, anticipating customer churn. So anecdote, maybe confession. I took the bar exam. Bar exam has 200 multiple choice questions. I took a lot of practice tests, and I might get 50 questions wrong on a practice test. And mostly what I would do, and I think many of my peers and other folks would do this too, they would study the 50 questions they got wrong. And then I'd go and I'd take the next practice test, and I would get it to a question. I'd say, oh man, I think I got that question right, but I don't remember what I put. And so now I'm stuck. And a real world example, I work in Google Shopping. I'm a product manager, and I can talk a little bit more about my background later, but I thought it'd be more interesting to dive into the details. And in Google Shopping, or just in shopping in general, we think about this concept of offer coverage. Given that you have a product, how many do we have an offer that we can associate to that product? So of all the products in the world, how many offers? Let's just say that we have 80% of the products in the world we have offers for. So that means we have a 20% gap. It'd be easy for our team to go out and say, all right, OKR, objective and key result for next year, close the gap. Let's get the 20% down. And so we spin up a team, we dive into the 20%, we do all this work, we're making great progress, we're showing how the 20% shrinking, but then we look at the total numbers at the end of the month and we say, wait a second, offer coverage is still at 80 and 20. What happened? We didn't appreciate that maybe we did shrink the 20, but the 80%, we may have lost some. So that what started at 80 may now have actually been 70. Going back to our milkshake dilemma, Clay and his team were faced with a very similar question, how to sell more milkshakes. They didn't go and say, okay, 100 people walked in during this time, 20 bought milkshakes, let's go get the 80 people to buy more milkshakes. They studied the 20. They said, the 20 people that did buy the milkshake, what job did you do? Why did you do it? They wanted to better understand why they were hired. And I think this is a lot about studying your right answers. And it helps you make sure that people continue to hire you when you're trying to solve the problem to be done. So key point here is once a customer hires your product, don't assume they're going to keep hiring it. They can fire you at any moment. All right, next. I want to talk a little bit about, I see some comments here. I'm not sure if I should go. I'll have some time at the end. Henry Prince. Oh yeah, great. At the end, I'll look at the chats and we can do some Q&A. So the next section here I want to talk about is what I like about you. Jobs theory. I'm going to tell you a couple things now that we understand it a little better, what I like about how it helps me in my day-to-day life as a product manager. So number one, jobs are better than personas. Who here uses personas? A lot of people, I'm guessing, use personas here. I'm not a meme expert, but I'm aware of this meme and I thought it was very applicable. So let me try to explain it. There is Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is dressed normally, the schlubby bear he is, just trying to get his honey. And then Winnie the Pooh decides to get all fancy and puts on his bow tie. And in both situations, he's doing the exact same thing, but he just explains it a little differently to get a little more fancy. So in one situation, you have pizza. The other situation, you have organic milk tossed over seasoned tomato puree baked on sourdough. Why this is important is because it's still Winnie the Pooh in both situations. So I'm male. I'm age 30 to 40. I have multiple degrees. I'm married. I have a kid. I have a dog. I read the New York Times. I listen to NPR. I live in a city. I work in tech. All these things. all of those things are true of me in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, on weekends, on holidays, on my lunch breaks. They're true if I'm trying to buy a stroller, and they're also true if I'm trying to look up a stroller just to show my friend which one to get. The problem with personas is they don't appreciate the different circumstances that I might be in. They're just generic. So it's important to understand that in the job that's trying to do, we go back to our example, is around the specific circumstance. If we just use personas, we're going to end up with the one size fits none solution that doesn't do any job particularly well. Number 2, identifying competition. Who here knows what's Netflix's competition? Tell me, anyone have an idea for Netflix's competition? I'll tell you right now, Reed Hastings, CEO of Netflix, he said the biggest competitor to Netflix, sleep. Anything you do to unwind and relax is Netflix's biggest competitor. All right, what about, I gotta be careful my clicks here, so I don't, oh, darn it, I already messed it up. All right, Google Meets. Google Meets' biggest competitor. You maybe saw it already. Airlines, kayak.com. So you were seeing it actually play out right now. This is an economist's dream to have a real world example like this, a natural experiment. Airline prices are crazy. Airlines are canceling flights because they're losing the business traveler. It was the most important traveler to their business. And if you're in a business, and I work with people in Zurich and New York and Pittsburgh and California all day long, and sometimes I say to myself, if I could just get in the room with them, it would be so much easier. So I go, I book a flight, and then I have to deal with the whole experience of booking a flight, expensing the flight, flying, and all the time spent away from But if the video conference was so good that the struggle of, I just wish I got a person, if I could actually solve that struggle over video, I don't have to bother getting on a plane. The biggest competitor to Google Meets is actually flying. All right, last one, BMW. Ford CEO said that they are not an automotive company, they are a mobility company. So this is why we rewind many years. I think it was like Ford did it, GM did it. I probably am going to mess up the exact details of which of these big U.S. automotive manufacturers. They invested in Uber, Lyft, and autonomous driving and scooter companies, and they realized that the competition is a lot of people don't need to buy a car anymore because they can just rent when they need to. They can hire a taxi, hire an Uber to get the job done from getting point A to point B. They don't need to buy a car. All right. Oh, one more thing on competition. So when we think about competition, one of the things that makes this so important is, as a product manager, one of our key jobs is market sizing. Target audience opportunity, right? A target total addressable market. And we have to often create these big numbers and present them and say, hey, everyone, look at me. This is a great idea. You should trust me. I made this big number that we're going to get all these customers. If we go back to our McDonald's, if we look at how to size the market, let's go back to the McDonald's example. It's very easy to say, okay, let's add up all the different milkshakes that were procured at Wendy's, McDonald's, Steak and Shake, Burger King, whatever they are, add them all together. That's the market. Divide the amount that I sell, that's my market share. Boom. But what we're missing is that we don't, as the McDonald's milkshakes, we don't just compete with the other milkshakes. Remember, we compete with bananas, donuts, bagels. So our real market opportunity and our real market share is actually, we're competing against people's stomach, the share of people's stomach. How much of the share of a consumer's stomach do we own as McDonald's? And now that is a much more interesting number when we talk about market sizing opportunities. Number 3, uncover the unusual use cases of our product. So NyQuil, very, very helpful product or medicine. And you're not feeling well, you take some NyQuil, or you take some NyQuil, you pass out, you feel much better in the morning. And you know what the NyQuil folks started realizing is sometimes, and I was guilty of this too. I'm actually not that sick, but I could really use a good night's sleep. All that Tinder swiping from last night and that blue light going back to the beginning, I need some help. So I'm going to just knock some NyQuil back. If you realize why people are using your product, you realize, wait a second, I'm just going to rebrand it. Same product, ZZ Quill, perfect. You figured out that your product was being used in a way you didn't realize it, and now you have a new product. Another great example, Arm & Hammer baking soda. At one point, this was purely for baking. Now I bet many of you have this in your fridge. Sometimes it helps with stains. I think that people used to mix it with detergent and toothpaste, and voila, new product lines. And so now when you go to the grocery store, you can see detergent, you can see Arm & Hammer baking soda all the different places just because they changed the packaging, same product. Understanding why your customers are using your products, perhaps in unconventional ways, helps us understand why people hire our products and helps us prioritize what features to work on. So I just heard of an example recently in the news, Airbnb. A lot of people are using Airbnb for the job to be done of finding a new place to work. Want to travel, work from an Airbnb. So what Airbnb do is they actually have a new tool that as a host, you can do an internet speed test from your phone, and then you can, with one click, post it on your listing. So now as a consumer of Airbnb, a renter, you can see what the internet speed is of your hosts. This is amazing, super important. They realized that people weren't just using Airbnb to get away anymore. They were using it as a job to be done to find a new place to work. So as a great thing to do as a product manager is to be on the lookout for workarounds. These are also called compensating behaviors, another way to think of it. And this happens when a customer is so unhappy with the options at their disposal that they're willing to go out of their way to hack together an entirely different solution. Another quick little anecdote. I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and they asked me about why did Skype miss the Zoom window, like the opportunity. Like Zoom just like took off, and how did Skype miss the boat? And look, there's tons of theories for this, and I'm sure many people here we could dive into. We got some great product minds and have probably better hypotheses than I could ever dream up. But what it made me realize is that when a company or a product really nails a job to be done, just crushes it, threads the needle, nails it, your product becomes a verb. Your product is so well tailored to what the customers want to do and are trying to do in that moment that your product becomes synonymous with the job itself. Google, Uber, Zoom, right? They nailed the job. And that is really powerful. Lastly, I want to transition here. And I want to talk a little bit about this. Is a lot of theory, jobs theory. And theory is good, it's helpful. But how do we apply it? We want to make this applicable. So I'm going to talk a little bit here and give you a disclaimer. First, a disclaimer. Oops. Too many tools. All right. I told you here that this is the title of this presentation was using frameworks such as jobs to be done. There are so many frameworks out there. I'll admit right now, my name is Max. I'm a framework addict. I've got hundreds of them. You can Google online product management frameworks and you will just see Medium articles after Medium articles after Medium articles. There's websites that have them aggregated together. I was a former consultant. I used to trade frameworks like trading cards. I mean, it's frameworks. There's too many. So one thing that I hope that we can all agree to here is that there is no perfect framework. They're just tools in our toolkit. And applying a framework is not a one size fits all. It's not binary. It's not like, oh, I'm going to use jobs theory. And then someone else will be like, wait a second, you're using it wrong. No. The whole idea of a framework is you're trying to take a nebulous, gigantic, not well understood problem and break it down into some sort of sizable, solvable, actionable chunks. Today, I'm talking about jobs theory. If there's something that we talked about today that helps you do that job to be done, then jobs theory did their job to be done. It's a little meta there, not Facebook. So frameworks are malleable. With that disclaimer, I'm going to tell you what I think are the 5 takeaways. If you haven't listened, you've been tuning out, helping with the kids, checking your emails, whatever it might be, here are the 5 things that I think if you do, you'll be a better product manager tomorrow because of jobs theory. Number one, keep circumstances in mind. I mentioned before, we talked about shopping personas. People shop for different things for different reasons, and not based on our traditional pillars of, well, home and garden, electronics. So remind yourself that you cannot separate the job from the circumstance. Number two, measure how well your product helps customer get the job done. This is about metrics. So there's another theory here called the bed spring theory. Bed spring has thousands and thousands of springs in it. I don't know if it's actually thousands, but plenty of springs depending on the size of the bed. And the bed is designed that if one spring is cut, no, you won't feel it. So if you were to go into your team tomorrow and say, all right, we're doing jobs. This is what we're doing. Everyone's like, great. You've only cut one spring. No one's going to feel it. You've got to also attach jobs to your metrics. So in shopping, we often talk about a merchant click. So a merchant click is sending a shopper to a merchant. So one of my roles at Google used to be the product manager for the product details page. This is the page in Google Shopping that has all the images, the reviews, the highlights, the description, where, how to buy, recommendations. It's like the Wikipedia page for every product in the world on mobile and desktop. And it was fun. And I had to get people there. And one of the things we talked about was, well, did merchant clicks go up? And I'd say to myself, wait a second, wait. A shopper that arrives on the PDP and reads the PDP and decides to not go to the merchant, like, wait, this is actually very helpful. I realized it's not what I wanted. They did not end in a merchant click. The job to be done of the product details page was met, was satisfied. But if we only cared about merchant clicks, we'd miss the point. Going back to our Seinfeld example, little callback. If you're Hertz rental car and you're sitting up in your ivory tower in your boardroom talking about the shrimp store, and you say to yourself, okay, look at this hockey stick chart, reservations way up. Is that really telling the whole story? Did you actually help customers make progress towards their job? Maybe not. Number three, prioritize outcomes over features. So we took a traditional approach to identifying our competitors, like Google Meets and Zoom and all that sort of stuff. A very typical thing. And I don't know, I'm assuming a lot of you are also right now in the thralls of 2022 planning. That's what I'm doing a lot of these days. And it's very easy to say, okay, our product has this, our competitor product has that. Okay, we need to make sure we have that. And we make a list of all the features that we need in our product. And then we say, all right, let's prioritize them somehow. This is going to have an impact. So we do it. And then let's fast forward a few months. It's now middle of February, middle of March. Everyone's exhausted. Have you really made that much progress? You're a little slow. You haven't met your deadline. Leads now say, well, I need an MVP version. You're trying to chop it down, chop it down, chop it down. Everyone on the team now is just basically saying, I'm so sick of this. I just want to deliver something. And so you're trying to figure out what you can deliver that's the minimal viable of this product feature that you committed to in Q4. And what we miss in this moment is to remind ourselves, wait a second. And now you can do the product management bingo and say, hey, everyone, let's take a step back and say, what was our job to be done? And then you can say in February, wait a second, if we're going to scale this back, are we still having the job in mind? We don't, as product managers, from the day we set out to the day we implement, we make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of micro decisions. And each of those micro decisions can take us away from our outcome because we just get obsessed with implementing a feature. So align ourselves to outcomes. And another way to just call an outcome, as I mentioned before, it's a job. Align ourselves to jobs. Number 4, focus on ease over motivation. A common pitfall I hear a lot is that we need to educate our customers more about our products. Who here is guilty of doing that before? That's the problem. Our product's great. Our customers just don't know how to use it, right? One thing to remember about jobs theory is that the proof is in the pudding. If your product does not help a customer make progress to the goal they want to do, no amount of motivation is going to help them. Just make it easier. Make it easier to make progress. We are on a quest as individuals and consumers. It is a daunting experience. Make every step easier. If my product is difficult to use, that means I'm going to be willing to try something else. So put your energy Put your efforts around making it easier, not motivating. We need to understand the behavior that they're trying to do. And that is about job seeking. That's the important part. I was trying to think of an example for this, make it easier over motivation. And I was talking to my wife, and it dawned on me that, she's right now on leave and I'm working from home. And I come downstairs and, she's holding the baby's spitting up everywhere, and pacifiers on the ground, burp cloths far away, baby screaming his brains out, right? And if I looked at my partner and I said, good job, you got this, you're doing great, burp cloth is over there, you can reach it, I believe in you, I will get hit. This is an abusive relationship or anything. It just is it's pointless to motivate. Instead, you know what I should do? Make it easier. Go pick up the pacifier. Go pick up the burp cloth. If we focus on motivation, we focus on the wrong thing, we just make our customers more frustrated. All right. The last thing, keeping a bug list. So this is one of my favorite things to do. And to tell you about it, I'm actually going to quote David Kelly from IDEO. Let's see here. We are surrounded every day by products that don't work well, services that slow us down, and setups that are just plain wrong. The website that requires 10 clicks to accomplish what should only take 1 or 2, the projector that stubbornly resists linking up to your laptop, the machine at the parking garage that just makes paying so difficult. Noticing that something is broken is an essential prerequisite for coming up with a creative solution to fix it. Making bug lists, which Tom described in The Art of Innovation, can help you see more opportunities to apply creativity. Whether you use a piece of paper in your pocket or record ideas on your smartphone, keeping track of opportunities for improvement can help you engage with the world around you in a more proactive way. The running list can serve as a useful source of ideas when you're looking for a new project to tackle. Write down the things that bug you, and you'll start being more mindful of them. It may seem like you're focusing on the negatives, but the point is to notice more opportunities to do things better. And while many of the items on your bug list may be things you won't be able to fix, if you add to it regularly, you'll stumble on the issues you can influence and the problems you can help solve. Almost every annoyance, every point of friction hides a design opportunity. Instead of just complaining, ask yourself, how might I improve this situation? Or in our words here, how can I improve the job to be done? So with that, thank you. We can jump into some Q&A. I don't know if there's, I can look at the chat here, or if anyone likes to, I don't know if there's hand raising in Zoom. There's hand raising in chat and Meet, just throwing it out there. Another cheap shot.
There's definitely hand raising. But yeah, so Max, that was great. I really enjoyed it. I think others did too. Evan, looks like you have a question.
Friction point number 1, can't get off mute fast enough. There's part of your bug list. So I'm working on a project where we don't have a specific product. We actually are a retailer and we sell every product. So we're starting with the problem, or rather the job of, let's say I want to eat healthier so that I can XYZ. A lot of different motivators there. But let's just say the progress I want to make is eating healthier. And there's a lot of different products. In fact, most products either in some way contribute to your health. But specifically for eating healthier, what you described, you start with a product and you say, why are people hiring it? And then figure out ways to remove barriers to accomplishing that job. What if you start with the job and then go down into looking for opportunities and prioritizing ways to help improve that, sort of irrespective of what product you have?
Yeah, great question. So actually, Randy has part of what answer I might apply here in the chat, which is, I think you're missing the circumstance. So if the job is I want to eat healthier, when? Right? So I'll give an anecdote to this. So Google.
Yeah,
okay,
like let's say I want to lose weight as my ultimate goal. Are you
Okay.
saying that I need to deconstruct the food aspect of losing weight in every eating circumstance, of eating on the go, eating breakfast, eating a snack, eating to indulge, eating at lunch, eating at dinner with family, with not, eating at special occasion? Like, there's maybe 15 different of those circumstances, and I would treat each of them as a distinct job?
That would be how I would go about the brainstorming opportunity, because you might realize that your opportunity is to that the job is not being done at the corporate setting. And so you might decide to yourself, when people are eating unhealthy, it's actually when they're at work, because they don't have any good options and they're busy. And so they're just hitting up the vending machine or whatever's fast or, food for them. And so if you do list out I'm a big diverge converge person. So listing out all those things you just said to me spurred all these ideas and examples of where you could actually enter into the market, and where you actually could understand what job you want to do. Just helping someone generally lose weight, I feel is it's just too broad. It misses the circumstance. Because do you want to help them exercise? Do you want to help them live longer? Do you need to help them because they have a heart issue? Do you want to help them because is healthier food too expensive? There's all sorts of smaller things that you can break that down. And that way you're not solving a big problem for, solving something for everyone when you solve something for no one.
Makes sense, except as a retailer that does serve everybody and all jobs, it kind of makes it hard to focus on one little piece when by nature we are a platform that is supposed to serve all jobs.
Hey, so Google is the greatest job aggregator of all time. You go to Google, you type in that's what you do. You type a job in. So I hear you of understanding, trying to do for everybody. I think getting tactical to make real impact, you have to break it down. And maybe your organization should break down into those ways too. Maybe you've got product manager reporting to you and you should say, okay, we can't do every single thing we want to do next year. So I'm going to organize us to say, here are the things we're going to prioritize, and here's why, because I think they're going to have the biggest impact. And I'll give you an anecdote of something I think is very cool about Google. Google had a job to be done around helping their employees be healthier. And part of the reason, I'll be honest, is it has to do with healthcare insurance and costs for them as well. It also means more productive employees. So we have free food everywhere. It's a big thing about Google. And we actually have these kitchens on every floor in every office, and they're glass door refrigerators that have all sorts of stuff in it. But the bottom half of the door is frosted. The top half of the door is clear. And on the top is all the healthy drinks. On the bottom is all the unhealthy drinks. And it's the same thing with the cabinets and the food. The healthy things are on the top: bananas, apples, oranges, nuts. The lower you get down, the more unhealthier objects the food is. And what this does is they realize that I am tired. It's 3:00. I just want a snack because I just had a million meetings, and I'm just going to grab whatever is easiest to grab. But Google said, okay, if that's your problem, we're going to make your default choice a healthier option. If you want the unhealthy stuff, it's all there. Choice is yours. But we're just going to slightly change the design of our kitchens to help you eat easier. Very low cost experiment, very easy to do, didn't require huge changes, and helped with the job be done. I want to look and see if there's some other questions here too. This is a great conversation, Evan. I just want to be respectful of time, and if there's anyone else that wanted to have a comment or question as well. Otherwise, I'm happy to keep digesting and kind of going into the details.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Surely there's more. Randy, you always have a question.
I think Jeff, maybe you have to hand raise?
I have some trivia. The Pittsburgh's own Permani Brothers sandwich, one of the first dedicated customers were people who drove, namely like garbage truck drivers. And Max may not know this, but Permane stacks coleslaw and French fries on top of their sandwiches. So that was where at least their biggest fans came on early on in the stack sandwich market in Pittsburgh.
What was actually the problem to solve was they wanted a full meal that they could eat with one hand, much like your milkshake example, Max. It's
Correct.
one meal they could eat with one hand. And so they put everything of a meal on a sandwich.
Yep. That's a good one. I do know that story. Jeff?
Yeah, you touched on Google Shopping, and that's a product that I definitely encounter. And I'm wondering about any jobs insights that you have found or problems that you've overcome by using this kind of thinking with Google Shopping.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I alluded to, the two examples that I alluded to here were around offer coverage and the product details page. So this goes a little bit to what Evan said. I owned the surface, right? The pixels of a page on both desktop and mobile for every single product in the world, every language, every country. And there's like 27 different offer annotations, returns, shipping, all that kind of stuff. There's like 26 other different features that could be on the page: images, alternate images, highlights, variants, product recommendations, reviews. And so we have to say to ourselves, there is so much we could be doing on this page. We have a list of features that it's a scroll. And we had to say, all right, how do we prioritize what to do? Because it's just overwhelming to figure out what to work on next and to motivate our team to say, okay, let's get laser focused. Let's do this. Let's experiment. Let's launch. Let's land. Let's move on. And let's create a higher velocity in which we actually can make impact. Because otherwise we can just be stuck in this paralysis of we're just launching features for the sake of features and they don't all connect with each other. So for the product details page, we had 3 jobs to be done. One was around learning, one was around deciding, one was around finding. And then we had a summit where we went and we brainstormed jobs, like going back to Evan's point, like 50 or so jobs under each one of those categories. And we mapped those a lot to saying, okay, what's the behavior that we're trying to drive for these consumers that we want them to take under these jobs for these pages on this page. And then once we had the behavior locked in, once we had the job, we went and said, okay, how do we make it easier for the customer to make progress towards this job? And that's when the features came in. And so then once we had that feature list, we stepped back and we looked at it and we said, all right, what are the things we could accomplish? Like what's the small, medium, large, like what's the biggest impact? What's, the classic prioritization of impact versus feasibility, and try to find our low-hanging fruit. And from there, we had a theme. We had a mission. Like my engineers, my UX, like we were motivated because everyone knew, why am I working on this? It wasn't to, oh, what do you work on? I launched this. Like when people ask me, what do? I don't say I work for Google Shopping. I say I help merchants be successful using Google. And we should all think about that and how we do our job description. That's what we need to rephrase as. So reframing that helped our team strategically. It helped our motivation, our morale. It helped our velocity in what we launched, and helped our prioritization. The second way we used it was, I mentioned about the offer coverage point earlier, which is we were doing a deep analysis and we were focused on the wrong thing. There's this streetlight effect quote where somebody drops it's a comic. Somebody drops their keys and the officer comes over and says, excuse me, what are you doing? And the person's looking under where the street lamp is. And the officer says, what are you doing? And the person says, oh, I lost my keys. And the officer said, where'd you drop them? And the person says, over there. And he said, why are you looking here? He said, the light's better. And so I think that we fell into that trap with the offer coverage, which is we just studied the thing we thought we were supposed to do instead of understanding why were we being successful. And that helped us uncover a lot of really valuable insights that actually turned into action. And that's one of the challenges we have as an organization is I can spin off a team and work with people and we do all these dashboards. We create all these dashboards. We have all these analysis. But what do you do with that analysis? And so to me, the jobs theory helps me realize, take the analysis, attach it to the job, take an action from it.
Thanks. That added detail was definitely interesting.
So Max, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this a method that you use that's used across Google? And so have you always done it this way? Because I have a fault. Then that will lead to my next question.
No, I mean, like, so this is how I view framework. So this is Clay Christensen. It sounds like here, like Evan might actually know more about this than I do. He sounds like he studied under Clay. That's pretty awesome. My mentor and my former boss in my consultancy was friends with Clay. And so he introduced this to me through that path. And it's a tool in my tool belt. Google doesn't sit here and say we do jobs. I think Dropbox, though, actually does do jobs. Like their way of doing OKR planning is around jobs theory. Like they actually say like, oh, what are our jobs? And they use that language. So I do think that there are some companies out there that do that. Google, the joke about Google, there's a meme or cartoon out there. We're a slime mob. Everyone's allowed to kind of operate their own way. So I organize our team using jobs. I don't always call it jobs because it's kind of weird and wonky. Sometimes I just call them objectives because we do objectives and OKRs. Sometimes I use another framework called the behavior model, which is from BJ Fogg, who teaches persuasive design at Stanford. And it's very similar to jobs theory. So I just kind of pick and choose different things that I find valuable, and I apply them to see how they can be helpful given the circumstance.
Yeah. And the reason I ask is, like to your point at the beginning, it's not about the feature, it's about what problem we're trying to solve. And like having been on the product management side of the world, and even, more so now I'm more on like the outbound product marketing side. But what I see is all too often that we forget as people, not saying people in my company, but it's forgotten, like what problem are we solving, which makes the value and the messaging around that value on the back end, now that I'm receiving it, it makes it like, well, you're uncovering, picking up rocks and looking under them. Well, what are we actually trying to do here? So I guess the real question I have is, do you find that I'm firmly believe like part of the product manager's job is to evangelize, or just maybe that might be heavy, but inform the organization as a whole as to what this product is. All too often I find we're focusing on what it does. So do you find that this methodology, and I think the answer is yes, but you'll give more color to it than that this methodology actually gives you that better foundation of, here's the problem, everybody, and here's how we're going to go about, it's not just solving it one, like the different ways in which we help solve that problem. Because getting everyone across, like, we're all so close to our products, we know inherently, but educating the organization and getting everybody to move together can oftentimes be very difficult.
So I was a basketball player. I think I finally officially have to say was. And basketball mechanics for shooting can be really complicated, right? The where your fingers are, your elbow, your shoulder, your feet, your hips, everything. There's a lot of technical complexity. For those of you that golf, probably very similar. And if my shot was off, or maybe my golf swing is just not working, am I going to think of the 1,000 different, am I going to go through, okay, all right, let's see, I got to fix this. Let me go through my 1,000 checklists here. Is my forefinger in the right place? Yep. Okay. Is my net right? And so I go through this checklist to try to troubleshoot why I'm shanking the ball or why I'm not shooting well. But for me, when I golf or when I shoot baskets, I usually try to have one thing to remember that kind of sets me back. It's like a mantra. So for basketball, it's always been elbow over toe, elbow over toe. As long as I remember to put my elbow over my toe, everything else like starts to click back into place. It recalibrates me. It puts me back in the field. It puts me back in the game, and I can now work on other stuff. In golf, I had another little thing where it's like, okay, just flip your wrist, or whatever it was. I'm terrible at golf, so it doesn't obviously work that well. The point is, I've used jobs, to your point, as that moment where your team feels like it is spinning. And I know you have all those engineers looking at you, you've got UX looking at you, and everyone asks the question, what do we do? That's the job of the product manager. What do we do? And you have to have an answer that makes sense. It's grounded in reason. It's not just sort of like, I'm going to say this because I struggle with this, and therefore other people too will as well, because you are not the user. I am not the user. So I've pulled out jobs theory in my back pocket in a similar way that you just described it as outcomes, and is to try to snap my teams back into the mindset of building outcomes, not features, solving problems, making it easier. Because there's this natural entropy that we all deal with as people and humans and working in complex organizations. And maybe it's just the way we're, all right, we got to do the OKRs. All right, when's my next performance review? Okay, when's my next promotion? And we can just get into this methodical trap. And we forget to snap out and say, wait a second, why are we building what we're building? And this, to me, is just a tool to help in that moment. It's elbow over toe. And so that's been the most helpful use for me. And it sounds like you do it too. But that's, to me, as a great product manager does this, and they know when to do it for their team, and they know how much their team needs it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. Because the one thing is, like, what I think about, and I'm not picking on Evan, like, to your point, like, can you solve all those problems? Part of that comes into that breaking it down to say, what's this problem? Because if, like, for us, like my company said, well, we help improve capacity management in a hospital, as an example. Like, well, there's a heck of a lot you can do to improve capacity management in hospitals. So you kind of, it pushes you in so many, you could, so you got to say, okay, well, what are the ways? And then so it's always that breaking it down. So that was really good. That was good. Thank you.
I think just a general comment was, I think what Max is saying kind of overlaps with the last speaker you had, who basically, and I did buy the book she mentioned, the Predictable Success, where companies co-evolve, where they have all these processes to the point where they're basically just executing processes and not really looking at why they were where they were, and why they want to go where they want to go.
Right.
And I back to your point, Matt, I see that with a lot of frameworks. I'm kind of into the agile world with, all this new terminology, and it's basically the same question is, okay, something got you here. If you want to expand it, you want to do, you'd like to keep your same principles, but you really have to reconcile with other things you're interacting with. And so the thing is, what can all fit in your time frame? And we manage our time. We manage every resource we have. You and your wife manage what you have to do for your kid. But we tend to just think we could do more, and more, and it doesn't have consequences. And I think, like I said, I think I'm a combiner. You can't combine everything of two things, but I think you can take pieces. And I think some of the principles of that book and our previous speaker kind of talked to the fact that, a framework or perspective has its benefits, but also has its downfalls if taken to an extreme. You just have to, if you're going to, again, use different tools, okay, I'm going to use this saw and this type of fastener, blah, blah, blah. It's all got to work together.
It's a good point. What are the limitations of jobs to be done that you found where you wouldn't want to apply it?
It's a good question. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't overfit. I can't tell you that I use it all the time for every situation. So I think it's probably not terribly helpful if I don't know. I think you probably apply it to any situation you really want to. I think you could. If you're going through an implementation or a migration, like a back-end migration, do you really need jobs, right? If the problem is already broken down well and you have a different framework that you're using, then do you need jobs? Probably not. Right? Like, to the point of there being thousands and thousands of frameworks. I wouldn't, what I probably wouldn't do is if your team is fine, there's this, I sometimes like to say it's better to be aligned than it is to be right. So if your entire organization is aligned to a particular set of goals and you want to get moving on that, instead of trying to tell everybody, wait a second, we should apply jobs theory, maybe the better thing to do is just try to move faster and then figure out whether the original hypotheses are right or wrong. If you're stuck or you don't see your metrics moving, like the McDonald's example, then maybe try jobs theory to see what you're missing. But if things, that's one way to look at it. I don't know. Other people have other ideas. I'm open to hearing some of this. As I said before in the beginning, jobs theory is not something that I sit here and every job I've had, not pun intended. No, I didn't share with you my resume because I didn't think that's what people were here to listen to. I didn't go and say, all right, my name's Max and I'm here to apply jobs theory. And I walk into the right, you read the room. Use what you need in a particular situation. So I have not always used jobs theory, but I've used pieces of it here or there, and I found it helpful.
I had a comment when I'm trying to understand again how this can be used, and again talking to someone who's done a little more than a handful of UX classes and probably have more books on interviewing, listening, observing, et cetera, et cetera. I being in this social media world, and again, it's there you want to understand, and you can go to the customer. I think that's the best way if you can grab the customer. But the customer is also someone on TikTok who's showing this novel way of using product XYZ. It's also this person posting on every social media. So I guess my question is, have you adjusted this to that social media and that being the customer?
Yeah. Well, the thing I think is really cool about that, and I don't know if this is your direct question, but there are studies about what it means for a brand to go viral on social media. So, one of the more infamous, using that word appropriately here, is the Tide Pod challenge, right? All these kids eating Tide Pods, and it was dangerous. It was terrible. And it was a thing that they were doing online and showing people, filming themselves eating a Tide Pod. But Tide Pod sales were up. And so it's like, holy, this isn't necessarily a good thing. So social media is interesting. I think it's one of those things where if you do some social listening, you definitely can learn about how people are using your product. Maybe that could uncover some of that nuggets like the NyQuil, ZZ Quill. Maybe it would make you realize that all these Airbnb customers were complaining about internet speed. So I think that there's a way to use social to help you understand how customers are actually using your product and what are those compensating behaviors they might have to be doing. And I think that's probably a good use of where social media comes in. I think it's probably, I work a lot with brands and merchants, and going viral on social media is not actually always a very good thing. They don't want it because they can't control their brand. So there's some mixed feelings from retailers and merchants about TikTok.
I'm not necessarily talking about viral as much as, again, when the McDonald's milkshake example is, the thing was you had somewhat of a controlled situation that those people had to go to McDonald's to get it. With the internet, a lot of these brands, people don't have to go to that, so there's no physical connection. Who really is this person unless they really tell you in privacy. So again, knowing the whys is kind of a little deeper dive.
Well, I think you're getting to the point of, if you have a public product like that, can you track your users? I think is what you're asking, right? So does Facebook really know who all their users are? Does Google know who their users are? Does TikTok know who their users are and how they're using their product? This comes back to when as a product manager, and this is another use case. So when you build something, you have to also build the logging and the technical capabilities to track the things you want to track. You can't just put something out in the wild, tell your engineers, hey, I wonder how many people click this button. They're going to go, I can't tell you. I didn't log that. I don't have like a visual element or anything around that. So when the other thing to do with your engineers is when you go to them, you say, okay, here's what we're going to build, and here are all things I want you to measure. They're going to be like, that's going to take a lot of work to do all of that. And you're like, well, yeah, I don't know, but I'm the product manager. And the truth is I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall and I just want to see all these metrics because once I see the metrics, then I'll decide what was important or not important. And that's really not how hypothesis-driven decisions work. And so the question is, if you have a job theory, just like any theory, a hypothesis, you say, I believe that I am going to help a customer do this in this particular circumstance. I will know if I am successful because X, Y, Z. Then working backwards, you say to yourself, okay, how can I make sure that I'm monitoring or viewing or measuring my customer, whether it be in a digital or physical world, to see whether they're making progress towards that job or hypothesis?
Has Google done anything around linking keywords or the search algorithm to intent and jobs? Like if I'm trying to, I don't know, beautify my lawn, there are probably keywords that are indicative of that intent. And then you could show not only articles, but you could also show a lawnmower as well as the Adirondack chair, depending on what's going on with my lawn.
Absolutely. I just sent a blog post about it. It's called Mum. This is what Google does well. This is when you nail the job and you become the verb. I think all it's like I search for something in Google, for instance, that says, okay, I want a thing that goes under my glass shower door to keep the water out. I don't know what it's called. I just want to search for that. And so Google tries to understand the intent behind that search to help give me the relevant answer that I need.
So is there, how does it know the intent piece? Like, does it take
I can't tell you that.
Not the algorithm, but like, you know, as someone who's managing the product for commerce, right? Like, it would be so time consuming for each of your brands to do job interviews and then articulate why somebody is buying their products, and then somehow feed that into Google so that it can appear in search results. Like, is there a way to deduce the job without doing an in-depth job interview from every brand out there? Because like that seems to be the approach. You hire a consultant or a UX researcher to say, for my specific product, here are the jobs and circumstances, super in-depth, but somehow Google can do it algorithmically for every job and every product and every situation.
So I'm not sure there's a direct question in there, but I'll tell you that yes, this is something Google's good at. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it accessible for everyone. And so when we think about product information, what product information is out there? We have descriptions for it. We have reviews. People gave reviews about it. There's product specs, product details. A lot of merchants like yourself, you actually use Google by giving offer feeds. So you give us all the information in an organized way about your product in order to be surfaced and participate across Google surfaces. So Google takes this information and we understand it. That's what we try to do. And when it comes to the searching element, I mean, we can think about this in a few different elements or aspects. I mean, you're totally right about UXR or UX research. Love them, use them, leverage them. They're the best. But if I search for a stroller, how I search for it might help understand what I'm actually trying to do with that stroller. Do I have shopping intent by the way am I writing stroller versus, Vista up a baby Vista versus and then, I'm price comparing or product comparing. Am I looking for where to buy? People now search in full sentences and questions. And so people give content and give context when they're searching, because they realize that the more context they give, the better results they get back. So there's a lot of clues that shoppers and people and humans are giving Google, because they understand the more information I give you, the better you can serve me in my need. And one of the things I always thought about on a resume, Googling should be a skill. If I asked everybody here a question, I want to know how many Google searches it took for you to get the answer. And some of the best people can get it in one search. And then you say to yourself, wait, what was your query? And you can learn a lot from that. So there's a lot of data mining and data understanding that goes into trying to figure that out. But I think, Evan, if I'm hearing you, like there's, a couple things I'm hearing you say is like, this is hard work and you have a big division with a lot of things to do. And one of the challenges that I know from my retail experience here is that I'm not sure that the best way to go about organizing a retail organization, e-commerce organization, is by category, because people shop, a health and beauty object can be $1 or it can be $500. People sometimes do it as an impulse buy. Sometimes they do it as a present. And all of those contexts are so different. And we need different solutions to meet all of those. But when we're a big box retailer like yourself, the strategy might be, look, we aren't going to be into personalization. And we're going to do personalization to a minimal extent. Maybe you have to be a subscriber to us or whatever it might be. But somebody has to be the blanket. Somebody has to be able to provide the everything for anything you need wherever you want it, the Amazon, so to speak. But if you're going to want to attack and win market share against some of the niche competitors that might be upstarting, like a diaper.com or whatever it might be, is the niche retailer that makes specific cosmetic brands that are now just selling on TikTok or Instagram and direct to consumer that way with the Shopify store, then you might have to do the dirty work of understanding why would someone go there versus here. And I don't know how else to get around it, but trying to figure out what job you're missing. Maybe there's a social element to it. Maybe there's an impulse element to it. Maybe you have to think upper funnel versus lower funnel. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Did I take that? I don't know, Evan. I mean, you're asking good questions. You're very much in this space. You and I seem to have a lot of overlap between, an MBA, jobs theory, and working in e-commerce. But I don't like to call our stuff e-commerce because technically we're not really e-commerce.
Enjoyed it. Thanks for entertaining my questions.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we call it a successful meetup? All right, so we're going to call it Max. I thank you so much for your presentation tonight. It was great. The Q&A was also great. Just a reminder, December 7th, we'll be here again, here being virtual, not in my house. Mike Belcito from Product Collective will be talking about mistakes product leaders, product managers make, something along those lines. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see other great presentations from the past few months. And with that, I thank you all for your time. Have a great night.
Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks. Good night.